To dig in a little more into the case, I'm joined now by defense attorney Misty Marris. Misty, always good to have you with us. So I was struck by the question that was posed in closing arguments. Quote, is Karen Read a rage-filled cop killer or the convenient patsy of a vast police cover-up? Those are two very different scenarios. And yet this jury, right, really couldn't find that either one was accurate. Were you surprised at all?
Completely different scenarios. And you know what? When this case first began, I thought the defense theory, it's called a third-party culprit defense, meaning somebody else did it. And that defense also included this elaborate cover-up. So when the case began, I thought to myself, that just sounds too far-fetched. That's going to be really, really hard to sell to the jury. But then there was a turning point in this trial, Erica, and it was the testimony of Michael Proctor. Not only did text messages come out that were just completely inappropriate and unprofessional, that's one piece of it, but the other piece is that his text messages and his testimony put the whole investigation in a light that it just did not have. It was filled with impropriety. And what the defense needed to do was sell a couple of jurors that on the fact that the prosecution did not prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And they were really successful with that focus on law enforcement and the investigation and just some inconsistencies with respect to that issue.
And the burden, of course, is on the prosecution.
Correct. Exactly. The burden is on the prosecution. So my sense is the jurors couldn't agree on the one critical element of the case. Did Karen Read hit O'Keefe? That is the one common element to the three charges. And if the jurors can't agree on that, then the level of intent becomes irrelevant and you end up with a hung jury.
So then to that point, right, if they couldn't agree on that, if the prosecution wasn't proving that key element of their case, is there anything that you saw in round one that makes you think the prosecution can change this or do something differently moving into a new trial?
I do think that they could have a strategic look back at this case and look at it from the lens of what went wrong. And one thing that they did in this trial was charge Karen Read with an intentional murder. So their case was that she had an acrimonious relationship with O'Keefe and she intended to hit him that night. With that, there were lesser included offenses, which means it's a reckless state of mind. And then there's leaving the scene of an accident causing injury or death, which is a negligent state of mind. I think the prosecutors, they may drop that intentional murder charge because then they can focus on the issue of recklessness. Remember, there was significant evidence that she was intoxicated at the time, that her blood alcohol level was way over the legal limit. So focusing the case on that aspect and maybe thinking this intentional theory, she was overcharged. The other piece of this that's going to be very relevant to what happens moving forward, exactly as Jean said, Proctor is under internal investigation. What is yielded from that? What with respect to the investigation comes out of that? And also the DOJ is investigating how this case unfolded. So is there going to be some clarity from that respect? And is the investigation going to be impugned? All of that is going to be what prosecutors think about if they go back into the courtroom on this one.
All that is coming into a play. As Jean noted, there's a hearing set for the 22nd, for July 22nd. If this does move forward, right, we're talking about a new trial, change of venue, do you think that would get granted?
I think they have to at least ask for it from the perspective of look at that crowd, Erica. Look at both the supporters and the people that are convinced that Karen Read is guilty and got away with it. That community is saturated with this case. That being said, it picked up steam and it's now a national news story. So the counter argument is there is no jurisdiction in this country that hasn't heard of this case and hasn't formulated opinions. So this jurisdiction, where it's the most meaningful, is the correct place to go. So it'd be interesting to hear those arguments. But I think there is a pretty decent argument to get this case moved.
Misty Marris, great to have you as always. Thank you.
Thank you.